Today we're diving into one of the biggest challenges that growing businesses face, explaining what you do in a way that people actually remember. Today we're discussing the power of clear positioning with Krista Patterson. Welcome back to Branding with Bex. We're talking to the CEO and co-founder of Positioning Collective. Krista has a gift for helping companies untangle complex offerings and identifying what truly makes them different. From this, she helps them build messaging that cuts through the noise. If you've ever struggled with the question, so what exactly do you do? Or, hey, how are you? What do you do for a living? And you found yourself trapped in the we serve everyone zone, this conversation is for you. We'll talk about positioning, differentiation, messaging, and why simplicity is often the hardest and most valuable part of branding. Krista, welcome to the show. Can you start by sharing a little bit about you and what led you to starting Positioning Collective?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Let's start there. It's lovely to see you. We started our business in 2020. My business partner, Alex Crawford, and I have known each other for years, and we decided in 2020 to launch a business. Now, looking back, I don't know if that's insane or just excited. I don't know, whichever it is. Brave. I guess it would be brave or insane. We really wanted to be the agency that we wanted to work with when we were in corporate life. So we found a lot of agencies were really big and bulky, and we wanted to be stealth and come into the market providing those same things that big agencies provide to big companies. We wanted to provide to small companies all the way through from 6 guys in a garage to fully funded startups. Is kind of where we started.
When you bring on an agency to take over some area of your business, it can feel very overwhelming. A lot of my listeners on the show are entrepreneurs who are just starting out themselves. I think they'll have a lot of value in this conversation because you might not be at the stage where you want to work with a huge agency yet, and also you might not get maybe like the hand-holding or the personal touch that you would get working with your company. So you've worked with a lot of different companies that have really evolved over time. Are there any signs that you see from a business where they're thinking, okay, maybe they're starting to outgrow the positioning that they started with or the direction they thought they wanted to go?
Yeah, absolutely. We see this in almost every engagement. And really it comes down to, as you describe your business, the more you add words to that description, that really tells us that, okay, wait, let's step back and let's position you in a broader way. I always think of it as your positioning needs to be authentic, but also aspirational. And the simplest example I can give you is a pencil company. If a company's making pencils and they position themselves in the market as a pencil company, the day they decide to make pens makes that obsolete. So if that pencil company can really think about the up and to the right, the authentic yet aspirational view, they're going to position themselves as a writing utensil company. And so I think that really is the differentiation. Like if you can widen it, it doesn't mean you're making your business smaller. I think sometimes people feel like, or business owners or founders, I want to tell them everything we do. We do so much.
Right.
And I so appreciate the passion and I get it, but the clarity in saying the in the door, the foot in the door, the one sentence that will get you in the door and allow you to tell your full story, that if that is clear and slightly aspirational to who you are, it gives you the most bandwidth or space to create the company you want as you go.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up. I think you can relate to that too with even personal branding. I feel like a lot of times when people think about branding themselves online, they have so many passions and they want to share everything, but it seems like the personal brands that are the most memorable are the ones you can easily tell what the resource you're going to them for is or what value they would provide. That definitely relates. It sounds like it relates here to how you're talking about positioning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does. And we run into it the same, right? As in our own business, accidental entrepreneurs, we provide a lot of services and we really need to get to what is it that we provide. And what we provide is clarity. Honestly, that is what we work with people on it, whether they're an individual thought leader or a company founder, or like I say, 6 guys in a garage. We work on helping them get clear on what their business is and what it could be. And how do you articulate that?
Yeah, that's great. Sometimes it's easy to get really wrapped up in what you're working on that you forget to take that step back and to have an outside perspective look in can really make such a huge difference. And you may get this a lot, but when a founder says, we do so much, how could we possibly narrow it down? We're so excited to share about everything. What's a way that you could get them to help find that clarity without oversimplifying what they do?
Yeah, absolutely. You hit it right on the head, actually. What we ask folks to do is to talk to their customers, to talk to people that know them, that understand their vision and their mission. maybe, and ask them about what they see the company to be or the possibilities to be, and then to think about what they have on their list about what that could look like. And that difference is really where the positioning work lives. And we do that. We facilitate it with our clients. We go in and ask the questions. We do interviews with whoever they tell us, and some people maybe they don't tell us. Stealth, because that's where you find what your real perception is. What the perception of you or your business is doesn't live in your brain, it lives in others. And so while you may not have control over the perception, you can absolutely influence it, again, with a super clear position. And so that actually is it. You mentioned it, and that is exactly. You have to take other people's word for what your perception is.
Yeah.
And respond to that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One thing we just talked about on the show was the storytelling piece to the story living piece. We're seeing so much, especially with digital marketing, and then now field marketing seems to be making a little bit more of a comeback for people, where people want to go into in-person events again.
Yep.
There's that balance of the storytelling from the brand is where you think the brand, how you want your perception of the brand to be. And then there comes that story living piece where it's what are actual advocates or users of your brand? What do they say about your brand? It's so interesting. Sometimes it can be very different. What you think the problem that you're solving is actually not aligned with what the customer says. So really interesting that you bring that up. I feel like for a lot of business owners, it's so easy to get wrapped up in what you think the problem is that you're solving or what you think your business is about. But then you hear the perspective from your customers or even just from other people out there, and it can be very different. It's great that there's services where you can actually ask those questions, because sometimes we get so wrapped up in our work.
Yeah, we absolutely do. We did this same process for our business in, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. And I was looking at what our clients at that point were saying about us, and the things that came up, gosh, I don't even remember, like, wow, did they actually feel that way? Okay, that's really interesting. Or, okay, great, we've addressed that, right? In the years following. And I think we've made progress there. And I'd love to go back and ask those same people again.
Right.
Most of them are still our clients, kind of in and out, it depends. And see if we actually have shift perception. When we talk, this is not what, I know it's not the topic, but when we think about brand and we measure brand, in at least in the corporate world, we know it takes 2 years plus to change brand perception. So the thinking then is that your positioning should have should have legs, should last, right? Far longer than the 2 years or the 18 months it takes to shift perception.
Yeah, that's a really great point. For someone that's listening, maybe they're not super familiar with marketing, maybe they're an entrepreneur and they're kind of just dipping their toes into everything. How would you differentiate positioning and messaging, and why do you think so many businesses confuse those?
Yeah, absolutely. It is, messaging is what you see, what you hear, what you read, the words that, or even visuals that are public facing. The positioning is foundational, and it doesn't only come through in your marketing. It doesn't only come through your communications efforts in public relations in those areas. It is truly foundational to your business as a whole. And there are, interesting ways that you can apply it. And I think in the most successful cases where we've driven really clear positioning, they have used it in every function in their business as truly their North Star. So my business partner, Alex, likes to say, like, positioning is your foundation, and any marketing or comms efforts is the paint.
Right.
Now, you can change the paint, but you can't fix a cracked foundation. So when your advertising taglines change, but they still reflect a solid position, that's exactly how it should work. You might change your marketing or your comms efforts or your messaging based on a new audience you're going to, or your sales are down, you want to drive leads. You might change, or you're going to go hire great people and we really want to message to them specifically, but the positioning doesn't change. Right. You're still in that position in the market. And so it's foundational. Messaging is the paint, Alex likes to say.
Yeah, no, that's a really great way to put it. Has there ever been a company that's really transformed its growth or maybe its customer perception after getting really specific and clarifying their positioning?
Yes, there's a couple clients of ours, but there's also some really important, I think, consumer brands. So I'll maybe give you one of each. And I know they're reclaiming it as of last year, but Starbucks really had the third place as their position. They wanted to be the third place in the market. Lots of years ago, but you never heard or saw it in their advertising. Yet that is what they were driving for. And now, really interestingly, in 2025, they've started to reclaim the third place. So they now looking back, feel like maybe they've abandoned it, I think, and are going back to track to that. Volvo's another great consumer brand where safety is truly their position. It's not the only thing you see in their marketing, but that is their position and it comes through really strongly. One of our clients, Datrium, is a great example. We started working with them. They're part of a hypervisor type market space. They were acquired by a VMware, which is a company that is no longer. They were also acquired by a different company. But they brought us in to really look at how dated their position was. And it was just that. It was dated. It was really left behind where they were and how they had tracked technology with the market, but their position was 10 years ago. And so we recrafted that and they were acquired really soon after that, which was their goal.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Do you ever see that there's like a consistent time frame? And this is a bonus question, so feel free to skip it if you don't want to answer. Do you feel like there's ever a time frame where you're like every certain amount of years that a business has been around? And I guess it really probably varies per industry, but trends, things are constantly changing. I know it's not necessarily chasing a trend, but in order to adapt to the market that they're in, do you feel like there's ever a time where people or where businesses need to change their positioning? Every 5 years, reevaluate your positioning, or every 2 years, or what does that time frame look like?
I think the better the position, the longer it can go.
Okay.
Because it will give you that breadth, right? From pens to writing utensils. There was a technology company that we worked with that was thought of as plumbing a long time ago. And then when the internet came along and the internet got, going, they really felt like, okay, let's reposition it. Should be how we're changing the world. We're changing how you work, live, play, and learn. That's very different from plumbing. That position in the marketplace, I think, is still in place today. And that was probably 20 years ago.
Wow.
That they put that in place. So I don't necessarily think that it's time bound, that you might check in on it. And I think typically what happens is executives, leaders have a very short attention span and they think it needs to be changed all the time. I would argue actually the opposite. If it's done really well, it can be long. Now, it can give you a long runway. I think that if you're changing who you sell to, who your customers are, who you want to hire, a full category change, whether you are, really different market space, not just pens to pencils or the opposite, pencils to pens, but a technology company that's now going into consumer goods. Mm-hmm. There's an interesting client actually that we had that's developed technology to filter out microplastics in your water. Well, which sounds like an amazing technology that they could be selling the patent on it, right? They could be selling products. They're choosing to go to market with bottled water. And so that's a really interesting, okay, you came with a technology message, B2B. Right. Now we're talking about consumer goods, B2C. That kind of change signals you need to reevaluate your positioning for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if someone's listening and they're saying, okay, I feel like my brand positioning sounds very complicated. Maybe they're in a similar situation where it's tech and they're looking to start selling to customers. What's one practical exercise that they can do this week to make their positioning clearer and more memorable for the consumer?
Absolutely. I think going back to the outside in view. Mm-hmm. Gosh, and I think it's a really great practice to have always as a company or a founder, a leader, is to try to get that outside in. So one of the exercises, it is literally the first week of our founder positioning lab that we run. The first week we want to understand the gap. Where are you? And so it's really just this. Go to people that you think know your business, that you've talked to about your business. Ask them, how would they fill in the blanks? I describe what you do as, and the reason I pick you is one or many of those, and how you would answer the question as a founder, as a leader, about either yourself or your business. And the gap there is where your positioning work lies.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's a great exercise. So many of us can do that, but just because it makes sense to you doesn't mean that it necessarily makes sense to your consumer. As we wrap up this show, if anybody is interested in working with you or learning more about Positioning Collective, what does that process look like? Do you have any resources available? And I'll also add the link to your website in the show notes too, in case anybody wants to check those out.
Perfect. I think that's the best place to go, and or follow me or the company on LinkedIn. Okay. We have just launched our latest cohort for the Founder Lab. So if people are interested in joining that, we have a few more spots. So definitely check into that. And like I say, this initial exercise is week 1 of a 12-week program. So 12 weeks to get you through like some solid clarity around your position is definitely something we'd like to help with.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Krista. I really appreciate your time today, and I'm so looking forward to getting this episode out there. I think it'll be really helpful.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
I hope you all enjoyed this episode. One of my biggest takeaways is that clarity isn't necessarily about saying less, but it's about making sure that people immediately understand why you matter and why you're different. For everyone listening, if your brand feels difficult to explain, maybe it's a signal that it's time to revisit your positioning before you invest more in marketing. Krista, thank you so much for joining us on Branding with Bex and for sharing your expertise. And to the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another conversation designed to help you build a stronger, more memorable brand. Until next time, keep showing up, keep creating, and keep sharing your story.